Welcome once again to well, I guess it'll be a double posting tonight. You'll be going on the Stompin Tom fan club on Facebook and Canadian music in the 80s and 90s and more, my YouTube channel and Facebook group, and hopefully you like what you're seeing. If you do, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Um Tonight I'm starting with it's an honor to have this gentleman back. I've interviewed him before. Brian Edwards, longtime promoter of, well, he's a promoter of any kind of music and act you could find in Canada. And he was last week inducted in the Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame, and I'm glad to have him here tonight. There's a picture of him there. If you could explain, what was that picture there, Brian?
That was set outside Hamilton Place, actually, and I seen that chair sitting there with the guitar, and I thought, I want to sit down there and get my picture taken with that guitar. So that's exactly where it came from. They let people come by and sit in that chair, and I just thought it kind of summed it all up. There was a nice maple leaf in that guitar. It kind of reminded me of a guitar Tom would play, something like that.
For sure. That's a great picture too.
Thank
Um,
you.
so it's something, I guess it's something to have had that happen in Hamilton too, because I guess you remember shooting a DVD for Tom in Hamilton, and I guess it was kind of an honor to be there to do it.
Oh yeah, that matter of fact, I don't think I've ever sat in a chair in Hamilton Place and watched anything before. And of course, that's where the DVD was shot. We had a lot of shows in that particular building with Tom over the years too. So he felt quite at home there, and we certainly felt just as at home there last week. It was very, very, very good.
So when did you find out you were actually going to be inducted in the Hall of Fame, and how did you find out?
The president of the CCMA called me in late July, and it's funny because when my cell phone popped up the word CCMA office, it certainly was the last thing that was going through my mind. I certainly wasn't thinking of that. So when the nice lady called me and said that I was going into the Hall of Fame, I was kind of dumbfounded because I certainly wasn't, it certainly wasn't on the things I expected that day. That's for sure.
Um, so what was your first reaction when you heard? Like, were you just like
Well,
other
at
than
first,
dumbfounded? I mean,
well, I said to the lady, I said, first of all, I'm very honored, and um, I said that maybe we should have another call in a couple of days to let me kind of think about it through my head and all that sort of stuff to get it straight.
right,
It's kind of an interesting. Um, it kind of brings it all around for me. I mean, there's so many of the artists that I
sure.
worked with over the years that are in the Country Music Hall of Fame that it certainly kind of brought it all home. And I was really delighted to be included. And to this day, I'm still. I mean, last week was quite a week. We went through 3 solid days of celebration, and
Mhm.
it continues at the end of October. We go out to the Bell Center in Calgary, and they do a 2 hour interview, and then later in November they're going to unveil the new part of the Bell Center that's devoted to the Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame. So it's kind of neat that being one of the inaugural members of that particular of this year, and that's when it's going to open up. So it's going to be really, really neat.
No, it sounds like it's going to be, yeah. When when you get an honor like that, like does it really make you think about what you've been through to get there?
It does. I mean, everything went by in front of you very quickly. When I think that, it's 43 years ago, for God's sakes. It's just so hard to imagine. And of course, all that starts to come back to you, but working with all those wonderful legends that I had a chance to work with.
Right.
And of course, Stompin Tom being one who I, very much wanted to pay tribute to through my speech there and all that sort of stuff. I got a chance to, you know, really tell the people exactly what Tom meant to me, and how his teachings taught me so much over the years. So it was all good. I mean, it's all a great flashback for me, and getting a chance to relive all those times again was a lot of fun.
Was there a lot of old friends you got to bump into throughout the week
Oh
there in
boy,
Hamilton?
I guess so. And so many emails and phone calls and stuff from people I haven't heard from so long, that it was just so nice to, and people I've known in the industry for many, many years, but never really had a chance to
Right.
um to meet them. So it was great.
It was seemed kind of appropriate that Red Green inducted you.
He sure did. Yeah, that was very special. He um he lives in Hamilton, Ontario, of course, which is kind of
Right.
convenient. But he hadn't done the red green character out in public for a couple of years now. So it was kind of neat that he was able to snap back into character pretty quick, and it certainly was the hit of the evening. Everybody certainly liked it, especially me. It was really cool.
Because you've been working with him for a while now, haven't you?
It's about 12 years now, and we really hit it off well. And I knew deep down inside, he did like country music a lot, and we've been to see a few country shows together. So it all kind of came around for me, and he knows me as well as anybody. And I was very honored that he agreed to do it.
Are you okay if we look at some more pictures?
Sure.
I got this one sent to me not too long ago.
Oh boy, look at that.
I believe that's my friend's Whiskey Jack on stage.
It is so. Yeah, and Graham Townsend over to the right hand side there. And that's a great picture because that tells it all. Look at the Canadian flags on the stage and everything. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, it would have been, I don't know what year that would that have been early 90s maybe?
It would have been. That would have probably been, my guess is somewhere around 90, let's say 98, 99, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And that was a good shot. I seen that posted. It looks really good.
Yeah, I guess the Whiskey Jack was out here in Charlottetown back in the spring. And
Yes.
they did a little tour out here in the Maritimes. The one they had to cut short because of Hurricane Fiona striking out
Right.
here.
Yeah.
But they
Well,
came and made up the shows. So
that'd have been great. I mean, you can't go wrong with that show. And Duncan's a great guy. And of course, Billy McGuinness, I believe, is touring with them too.
he
And
is.
great. They were always very supportive. Duncan was one of the original road managers on the Stompin Tom tour right from 1990. And it's great to work with him on that as well.
Well, they sold out the Trailside in Charlottetown. It's probably the top music venue in downtown Charlottetown, other than the Confed Center.
Oh,
But
great.
they sold it out, and I think they were really excited to do that. And it was really something to have Billy on stage with him because, as
Oh, yeah.
Duncan said, he's the only one that went through the war that he did. So of touring with Tom and that
Yes.
kind of thing. And Billy said he's still recovering from it. So which I
Uh,
thought was kind of funny. But
they don't get any better than Billy McGuinness. He's a nice fella. Really good lad. I always
speaking
enjoy
of
it.
speaking of Billy, here's a picture I wanted to tell you about. If I could find it. Oh, I can't find it. But anyway, Billy was here at the Stompin Tom Center this summer,
Right.
playing a show up there, and he brought Tim Hadley with him.
Oh God, that'd have been
So,
something.
oh, it was just something to see those two guys on stage again,
Oh yeah,
playing
absolutely.
those songs together, like
Yes. Yeah,
because they would have been on the DVD together, they would have been at the Memorial in Peterborough together,
sure would have. Yeah, you bet.
and they were on the last tour
They've got
probably.
lots of stories to tell.
Oh, they did. They had Leon Gallant on stage with them, who
Oh
doesn't.
God.
He's not out of place with them at all. It's just
Oh,
it
not a
was.
bit.
But there was supposed to be a second show coming up afterwards, and they went well over time because the audience was just so into it, and it looked like they were having a good time. Like they really did rock the place. You've been there, so you know
Oh
what it's
yeah.
like. But and they really rocked the joint. Like they really had the joint just a jump in those three,
Oh great. Sounds
and
like a party at Tom's house.
it really did. It felt like a party, and the key part was Lena was there all week.
Oh God, that'd been wonderful.
So to have Lena there in the front row was really something. And then they had this buffet like dinner thing outside that they put on with your ticket. And I ran into Lena outside, and she was so excited to run. She recognized me of all people,
Oh
uh,
great.
and she thanked me for what I try to do here to try and keep Tom's memory alive.
A very special lady. I always enjoy chatting with Lena, and we had a lot of great times over the years.
Yeah, she's it really is something to see her there at Skinner's Pond up at the center. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'll bet.
It really, I can't describe what it's like to see her there, to like enjoying the atmosphere and seeing, this thing that finally came to fruition after all these years.
Yes, absolutely.
She really is quite a lady. But it's nice to see that she's still in touch with the other band members, and I'm assuming you still keep speak to her
Oh,
quite
absolutely. I
often.
heard from Lena last week, as a matter of fact. So she was pretty happy with the induction into the Hall of Fame. She thought that was quite special.
Yeah, it was. Again, I'm so happy to see you get inducted. It was so great. It's just I had to get you on here and talk to you about it
Thank you
because it's
very much.
just
Well, it was, we always assume that, where the perception's always been sometimes that you have to be really old to get into a Hall of Fame and all that sort of stuff. And when I first got called, I thought, oh my God, am I getting that old? But then, you know, I haven't felt old since I've started this. So I don't feel any different now than I did 40 years ago. So I think it was just, as I say, it's, I know if I haven't met those that are in the Hall of Fame, I certainly knew all about them. There's no doubt about it, like the Wilf Carters and the Hank Snows and the Don Messer, and like Don and Leroy were there from the Tommy Hunter show. And of course, Tommy has been in the Hall of Fame for many years, and Carol Baker, and the list goes on and on of people. Eddie Eastman, that I've known forever, that were certainly in there.
but I mean you started at a young age, so
I did.
you were really young when you started. So I mean the 43 years is a long time, but it doesn't
Yeah.
look like it's put too many miles on you.
Well, there's lots of miles there. They're just the tires holding out a lot better than most tires hold out, or some tires it seems to have a lot of tread left on it still, thank God. No, we always paced ourselves well, and I think that,
Yeah,
I when I go back out on the road today, when and if I do, it's very, I certainly don't tackle 75-day tours with 65 shows in it. I certainly pace myself a lot more than I used to. And I think that comes with age, and I think that's a natural thing to do. I mean, trying to go out and do what we did 40 years ago is not good for
yeah.
anybody, especially me. You can't do that.
I remember you talk. I've seen you talk about, and I've read your book, which is fantastic, by the way. Um,
Like,
the you've talked about the way Tom was kind of different, the way he did things. Now, did it
correct.
differ? Did it differ between all the artists you were with? Did they all have different ways of doing things the way Tom did?
They did. Not one of them. I can't go down and say one of them was the same, because they were not. And that's one thing I had to learn at a very young age, is that, and if you would say to one artist, well, this is what I did with that artist, that doesn't matter. It really held no ground.
Right.
You would, everybody has their way to do things. And Tom had a very unique way that he wanted things done, but they all did. I mean,
Yeah.
when I first started to work with Red Green, he was a lot like working with Tommy Hunter. They didn't want any days off at all. They wanted to
Right.
go, if you had 28 days, they wanted to work 28 days. That's just
Yeah.
the way it was. They get in this groove and didn't want to get out of it. Where Tom was completely the opposite. Out of a 14-day period, he wanted to work 5 shows. That was very foreign to me, but I understood. And, I think that's part of the success, is trying to have me mold to them versus them trying to mold to me. And I think you get a lot more mutual respect. And if I said to Tom, listen, we've got to do 6 or 7 this week, he would respect that and say, well, you did the best you could to keep it down to 5. In certain cases, we just worked it out and we did it. So there was this mutual respect that certainly existed. There's no doubt about it.
But a lot of the guys you worked with had obviously, when you were working with them, it wasn't their first go round either. So they must have had their reasons for doing things the way they did.
Well, I think the thing is that sometimes you take an artist, for example, like Tommy Hunter, whereas Tommy didn't do a lot of road work because he was wrapped up with the television show as long as he was.
Right.
So he didn't get a chance to do as much touring as he did. And when he did, he wanted to do it the same way they did the television show. You went in
Hmm.
and you just went crazy and got it all done and just did it. So I had a lot to adapt with there as well. So I think the fact that we had a chance to do what we did with him was no different than working with anybody else. There's just a different pace. And sometimes people get into a groove and they have to stay into it. And it's very expensive when you're out on a road tour and you're taking days off. They're not cheap. Hotels and God
Right.
knows what else, are very expensive. There's no doubt about it.
I also was kind of, when your induction speech, I thought I heard you mention something about some of the DVDs you produced.
Yes.
I knew about the Stompin Tom one, but I didn't know about the Charlie Pride one you did.
The first one we did was Charlie Pride. I was had a company with a gentleman by the name of Andrew Barnsley, and
Right.
I'd met Andrew many years before that up at Parliament Hill when we were working on a Stompin Tom Canada Day special,
Mhm.
and then our paths crossed again about 12 years later when we did the Tommy Hunter reunion special at CBC. And one thing led to another, and we talked one night and said, we should be doing this. So Charlie was the first one that we'd done.
Right.
And then a group called the Von Trapp Children out of
Mhm.
Vermont was the second one. And then, of course, Stompin Tom was the third one. And then we did Rita McNeil live in concert as well, which was the fourth one. So we did four of them all total.
And they all did really well for you,
Oh,
didn't they?
absolutely. Yep, they sure did. Well, that was when the whole DVD craze was just coming out, and Bell Canada had just bought what they call a mobile video truck.
Okay.
And it was fairly new, and we had a chance to take that with us on the road to do it. And the Tom one was very unique because we were able to capture him exactly how he was in concert, and he really appreciated that very much.
Yeah, I was there for that, and
Oh, were you in Hamilton Place?
I'm on the DVD.
Oh, cool. That's
That's
great.
I just remember being there and finding out at the end of the show that I'm actually going to get to meet him and being very upset I didn't have a camera. And
Oh,
then
that's too bad.
the DVD came out a year later, and there I am on the inside jacket shaking his hand. I was like,
Oh, that's
wow,
cool. That's
that's a
neat.
it's a nice thing to have for, someone who's meant so much to you over the years musically.
Well, that was quite a night because the whole point with Tom was that you wanted to capture the soul live. So we started the camera and didn't stop and just kept going, and we got him at his best. I thought we did anyway.
I was really, I mean, I knew he was, but he was so good with the fans he was meeting in line that night. Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
he was just, he's so comfortable with so many different kinds of people. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. He treats them all the same yet different, if you know what I mean, like with the
I've
same
done
kind of
stuff
respect.
with lumberjack people to lawyers and doctors and nurses and you name it. And he would never treat anybody any different. It was everybody was in his books, everybody was the same. People would call him and want to do a VIP meet and greet, and Tom would say, well, everybody's a VIP. There's no such a thing. And he stuck to that. And I really respected that with him.
I'm not nervous to meet celebrities, but he made me quite nervous when I met him. I was very nervous. I didn't know what to say to him. I found him a little intimidating just because I'd wanted to meet him for so many years, and to actually get to say hello to him and shake his hand was really something.
Well, you're no different than a lot of the other people, including, the Governor General of Canada and prime ministers and the Queen and everybody else. I mean, there was quite the mystique around Tom, and it was kind of a real treat for those that did get a chance to meet him. And if you did, it wasn't a quick shake hand goodbye. I mean, he said hello and took the time to do what people wanted them to do. And God only knows we need a lot more of that today.
Well, I've gotten to know Mike Dunlop, I guess, who did a lot of
A
the
great guy too. Yeah.
the artwork for a lot of the CDs, and I think the DVD he did the artwork for that as well. But I think he told me that Tom picked out that picture of me shaking his hand himself, which really kind of makes me feel kind of like special to have that memory of him. You know what I mean? And
I worked with Mike Dunlop now for 25 years on all of our projects, and I would never have anybody else but him. He understands the whole deal and puts his heart and soul into everything. So I'm very, very proud and happy to work with Mike. A good fellow.
the other guy I was nervous to meet was Duncan and Whiskey Jack have been putting on
Oh yeah.
Stompin' Tom birthday shows since Tom
Oh
passed
yes.
away. And they were doing one at the Cadillac Lounge, and they were singing A Winter's Night, the Gordon Lightfoot song.
Oh boy.
And Gordon walked in while they were playing that song, and
Oh
he got a
God.
standing ovation from the entire room.
I bet he did.
And I just snuck up there because I just wanted to shake his hand and say I met him, and he talked to me for half an hour about hockey.
Well, there's two guys that had a lot of mutual respect for each other, and it was Gordon Lightfoot and Stompin' Tom. I mean, they were very, very close buddies for many, many years, going back to the 70s at the Horseshoe days.
Right.
And Gordon really thought a lot of Tom, and vice versa. I got a great picture that we had taken up at the SOCAN Awards that night. There was Gordon Lightfoot and Stompin Tom and Rita McNeil there. And
Right.
there's a wonderful picture of Tom leaning down to chat with Rita that we've got, and Gordon's not too far in the background there. And it was quite a special night.
Oh, to see three people of that status in the same room must just be incredible to be a part of that.
Well, back on September the 10th, many years ago, on the eve of September the 11th, when the world collapsed,
Mhm.
we're having a party in London, Ontario, because Tom had never met Rita McNeil. And we had Rita McNeil at the party, and all the men of the Deeps, the coal mining choir from Cape Breton,
Right.
and Tom. And we kept that event going to the wee hours of the morning, like to 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And the two of them were trading stories back and forth. And it was a real special night. So I've happened to see a few of those where I've thought they were quite special.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of artists over the years had spent time with Tom, such as, you know, George Fox, for one. George mentioned that last week in Hamilton, because George presented us with our Hall of Fame medallions
Oh,
here.
right.
Because George got it last year. So he talked about that night of spending it up at Tom's place and how much fun he had up there with him.
You've got your award. You said you had an award you were going to show me.
I do. This is the baby right here. This is the it's got the insignia right on there, and
Oh, that's
talks
great.
about Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame. And then it's it got the CCMA awards symbol down here. And this thing probably weighs 20 pounds. It is heavy. I'm not sure what it is, whatever it's made of. I certainly carried that around with me a lot last week, so I'm just finding a special spot for it in the house now. So I really like it, as a matter of fact.
Well, you've done so much to keep that classic country music alive, I think. You know, because a lot of the people you worked with, you know, you'd think their careers were over by then, but no, you had them working still. And
Well, I was very fortunate, you know. I mean, we certainly started out. It wasn't that way at the beginning, obviously. I mean, I worked with the Leahy family that were wonderful,
right.
and they certainly were not what you would consider to be, you know, I mean, the oldest one was 17 years old, so they certainly weren't called legends. But I really enjoyed working with them, and of course, we did a lot of work with Anita Paris and Tim Taylor in the day.
Mhm.
A local singer around here named Joe Aylward had about 5 top 10 records that we'd put out, and I enjoyed that. But my comfort level was really with the legends. Like, I mean, one led to another. Like the whole deal with Stompin Tom was certainly you know, put to bed when he knew I'd worked with Hank Snow and Wilf Carter, because he certainly was a big fan of their music and had worked with them before. So he knew that
Yeah.
a pretty good chance of being in good hands. But I loved all that stuff. I grew up with it. So to be able to work with it every day and work, and I mean, once the wings started to spread,
Yeah.
guys like Ray Price and you know, Roy Clark and Mel Tillis, and you know, one of Tom's favorite country singers of all time was Mac Wiseman. And to get a
Okay.
chance to, for Tom's 75th birthday, I had Mac Wiseman call him at home and sing a few songs to him on the phone, and it was just absolutely incredible. And so, you know, I was very fortunate. Listen, to be able to work with the type of music that you really liked every day and go on the road with it too, it was good for me too. I mean, I was having just as much fun as everybody else.
Do you get your ear picked a lot by some of the other people you work with about who you've worked with? Like, do people ever ask you, like, hey, what was it like working with Charlie Pride or Tommy Hunter? Or
Well, I've got to the point now that I don't give them a chance to ask me. I just start talking about it because I know it's going to come up in conversation. We'd seen some relatives today I hadn't seen in 40 years, and I knew that was going to be where the conversation went. So I just start going. And if they get sick of it, they'll tell me to stop, but most times they don't. And I think we've got a lot of stories to share, and I certainly am not shy with it. What I'm hoping in all of this is that sometime when you speak to somebody, no matter how old or how young they are, they might find something in all of this that might trigger something they want to do. And I had a lot of great teachers that took me under their wing, a lot of great promoters that I really looked up to, that had been doing this a lot longer than I had. And they took the time with me and sat me down and would teach me a lot of things. And I became a sponge. I would sit there and listen and absorb everything they were talking about. And I was very fortunate for 40 years to have those people in my back pocket all the time. And I think that's what really helped make it all come together. You get enough people that you're learning stuff from, and sooner or later in the middle of all of that, you can pull out stuff that really you feel comfortable with. And it turned into a wonderful formula that worked.
That's why I'm glad you got that book going. Like, I'm glad I guess it Tom that encouraged you to write the book, or?
When Tom was in the last, say, year or so that Tom was alive, we would share some good old chats together. We weren't doing the road anymore at the time, and I'd go up there, and he wanted me to tell him these stories, and they'd go on for hours. And when I had left, he would say, Edwards, if you don't put this stuff in writing or tell these stories sometime, you've got to get this out there, because they're so. I had started to take notes long before that. And luckily enough, I've got thousands of pictures that we've taken over the years. And those pictures come long before there were cell phones and any of that stuff. So
Right.
old Instamatic cameras or whatever they happen to be. So, and when I had it all together, I had called up John Farrington, who had written the books with Tom, the first one anyway. And I said, John, I got something. He says, I'm going to come to Peterborough. So I had about maybe 20 pages, and he sat with me for 4 days, and we
Right.
just sat on the couch right down here and we talked, and he recorded everything. Well, then I got the transcripts back, and John passed away. So I had all this stuff, and he had it all typed out and everything. And then about 4 years later, another gentleman that John Farrington had hired in Peterborough back in the early 60s was the editor of the paper, and he took it over, named Ed Arnold, and did a great job. So it was all fun. It was really something that I could share. And luckily enough, I was lucky a lot of people were very interested in it, and found the stories very, very interesting. So it was good.
I remember you came up to Skinner's Pond to do that show with Billy, when the
Yes.
book came out, you were reading stories from it. And I was gonna ask if you just quickly tell us the little Jimmy Dickens story about getting him to Newfoundland.
we had we had he and I were working together quite a bit for a while, and I I used to provide a lot of entertainment in those art centers over in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And a guy named Dick Stoker ran those theaters, and he called and he says, the board would really like to have little Jimmy Dickens in here. And I said, well, I don't think he's ever been to Newfoundland. He said, well, we don't think he's ever been here either. So I got a hold of him, and he said, where is that? And I said, well, it's kind of right out in the middle of the ocean and all this stuff. And he thought I was kidding him. And they drove all the way from Nashville in this 13-passenger van and a trailer behind it. And they drove all the way from Nashville all the way through to Sydney, Nova Scotia, North Sydney, and jumped on a ferry boat and went over to Port aux Basques.
Right.
They went over and they started to work, Corner Brook, and we do Grand Falls, and you do Stephenville, and you did St. John's, and so on and so forth. So I had gone over and seen them in St. John's. And when the tour was over, they were trying to get out of there, and they couldn't, because it was Easter Sunday and there was no planes running, and they were stuck up in Labrador. So he had to come all the way back off from Labrador, go into Corner Brook, get to Port aux Basques, get on the boat, go back over to Sydney, and then drive all the way back to Nashville. Like, that's a long way.
Yeah.
So every time I'd see him after that, say, Mr. Edwards, it's so good to see you again. And no, I am not going back to Newfoundland. Now, what he meant was he wasn't going back to Newfoundland being stuck there. If I was to fly him over and do the show, he'd go do it. But he was a gracious guy. And, him and Stompin Tom used to work the horseshoe together. And every time I see, yes, every time I see Jimmy, he'd say, would you please tell Mr. Connors I said hello? Because everybody was Mr. Connors or Mr. Edwards or whoever to him. And I would pass that on to Tom, and Tom said, oh God, I remember him coming in there very well. So Tom met most of those acts over the years, because either were coming and going, or they worked it together, or whatever the case was, and he did a lot of those package shows back in the 70s. There was a guy out of Seattle, Washington, named Jack Roberts, that would put them together on a show. There'd be Bill Anderson, Kitty Wells, little Jimmy Dickens, and Tom, and then a guy named Doc Williams used to put Tom on a lot of shows that we go down through Maine and New Hampshire and all through down through that way. So
Right.
yeah, he certainly, and of course, Tom was on the international show in Nashville many years ago during Fanfare, and he was a big hit then down there. So he had a chance to do some American dates as well, but he felt more comfortable here, and he decided to stay here, which he did.
Well, I remember the Tom T. Hall song that came out, and he mentioned Tom in the song, the Canadian
Yeah,
Women, Canadian Club song.
that's right, exactly.
So he must have
Well, it's
made quite an impression on him.
Well, and then we did that Conan O'Brien show in Toronto too, just after the Sarsy thing. So
Right.
he had taken the show to Toronto, and it worked out really well. And the producers just weren't quite sure what to make of Tom. But after me just saying, you let him do what he does best, you can't go wrong. And they finally just sat back and let him go. And as soon as they did, they realized that it doesn't get any better than that. Adam Sandler was on it with him. It was kind of neat. It was Tom, and it was very good. And of course, Tom was the belle of the ball, the Stanley Cup there and the whole bit. So it was great.
Well, I mean, they must have just seen the way the audience reacted when he came out and realized what they had. Like, because I
Well,
remember
there
the
was a lot.
audience just went crazy on that Conan show.
We had a lot of American fans that would come up, especially when we would work, around Niagara Falls or something like that. They would come over from Buffalo, or they'd come over from for out in the West Coast. They'd come from Washington State, and they were really dyed in the wool Stompin' Tom fans, and they loved the Canadiana side of things. And I always thought that David Letterman would have had him on there, just as I could picture the whole Thunder Bay connection with Paul
Well,
Schaefer and
Schaefer,
the
yeah.
Stompin' Tom thing and the whole bit. Because I'd met Paul a couple of years after that, and he always said he would have liked to have worked with Tom. So that's kind of neat too.
I think it's you that's told me like about the Nashville people that knew who Tom was and really loved him.
Well, they did. I mean, they had, as I say, they'd either worked with them. Like Marty Stewart was a huge Stompin' Tom fan. As a matter
Yeah.
of fact, I had given Marty the second book that Tom had written, and he called me up and he says, "Man, I really enjoyed this." And he said, "I thought it was great." And of course, Katie Lang did a lot with Stompin' Tom's music in the United States. Like they would, when she was really cooking down there
Yeah.
with her in the reclines, they would do a couple of television shows, and they'd be doing Gumboot Cloggeroo on it and all that other
Right.
stuff. So certainly, and so many of the artists over the years, really respected Tom, and they always, Wilf Carter, Hank Snow, all those people always asked how he was doing and all that stuff. So it was great.
There's a video on YouTube of Tom when he did Katie Lang's TV special.
Yes.
When he came out and played with her band, and
Yeah.
he sang the Katie Lang song, and he did I think he did Cross Canada with her, and then he did Gumboot Cloggeroo, and I was just so amazing how her band really fit in with him.
Oh, well, Ben Mink was playing the fiddle in those days, and I think John Diamond was playing the bass, and they were just, we'd done a couple, well, I'd done lots of tours of the Katie Lang, but it was as country as you could get. I mean, Ben Mink on that fiddle you couldn't have got much more country than that. We did a couple of projects for the Irving Oil Company down in the East Coast with Katie Lang, and I had Graham and Eleanor Townsend on there and Mac Wiseman, and they all fit in just perfectly. It was because she loved traditional country music too.
But she was good at it too, like in her early days.
Absolutely.
Like she could take any good country song and just turn it into her own, and just she had such a voice too. Like I mean it was she had to go and do other stuff too, but when she started, she really brought a lot. I mean, when she did that album or that song with the Brenda Lee, I think Loretta Lynn, and
Eddie
I
Wells.
remember, yeah, that was one of the most amazing things. And then of course Roy Orbison, that was something to hear as well. But
Well, Owen Bradley really took a shine to Katie Lang, and he had, of course, produced Loretta and Brenda Lee and Katie Lang and the whole. I mean, and Kitty Wells. So he had, and he just thought she was something else, which she was. I mean, she took Nashville by storm, which was great.
I was back in Ontario back in March.
Oh yes.
end of March, and I did a shoot at the Horseshoe. I called the Horseshoe, and they let me come in and just run my
Oh,
camera
great.
around for a little while. And I'm blown away at the. I don't know if you've been there in recent years, but they've got a big mural up at the front with Gord Downey and Stompin Tom on it.
Isn't that cool?
It's really cool. Like, I mean, it's just amazing how they've given credit to two guys that really made that building what it was.
The first Stompin' Tom album I ever had was called Live at the Horseshoe.
Hmm.
And I kind of alluded to that during the speech in Toronto, in Hamilton last week, that you know, I mean, I knew the words to every word on that song shortly after my 8th birthday. And I mean, it really had a big impact on me. And of course, I wasn't old enough to go to the Horseshoe, but I knew so many people around the Peterborough area that had gone there, because it was I mean, they'd go 7 days a week there, and
Yeah.
Tom would be there weeks and weeks and weeks on end. And it was a big deal. And I was only in the Horseshoe once, many years ago. We'd been approached a couple of times going back in there to do some stuff, but the problem is with it, it was such a small venue.
Hmm.
And for what we were doing at the time, we were doing the Massey Hall dates there and all that other stuff. It just didn't lend itself to the right thing to do at the time. So, but they had reached out many, many times to do stuff there. Tom used to work the place in Toronto called the Matador too, which was the
Hmm.
Hours Club. And I hadn't seen him in many, many years. And when I got a chance to see him again in 1988, I believe it was, EMI had a big party there, and it was like, I mean, it was magic. It was a nice intimate spot, and he had the two original musicians with him, Billy Lewis and the bass player. God, he
Was
lives
it
in Belleville.
Gary something, wasn't it?
Gary Empey, yes.
Okay.
And he was working with my brother in Belleville, actually. So, because he called me up and said, "You know what, Gary Empey?" I said, "Well, I sure do." He said, "I work with him down here in Belleville." So it was kind of neat that, you know, after all those years, but Tom had Tom loved the place, and apparently years ago he used to work it, because it would go till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, which is right up Tom's alley. He
For
loved
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
I got to tell you one story that I got to do this summer that really was quite an honor. I don't know. Have you heard of Chris Scott, who is in Across This Land?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Chris came to PEI this summer,
Oh,
and
did he?
I took him up to the Stompin' Tom Center, and Kirk Bernard let him go up and play 3 songs.
Oh boy.
He played the song "Sit Down, Mr. Music Man," which he sang in Across This Land.
Yes,
He
he
did
did.
he did a Mother's Day song that he wrote. And he did "If You Could Read My Mind" by Gordon Lightfoot, and he just had the place going.
Oh
Um,
boy.
but it was Chris informed me that it's 50 years since that movie came out.
Is it that long? Good
So yeah,
Lord.
for him to he almost had tears in his eyes to go to the Stompin' Tom Center, because Tom was integral in him getting started in
Oh,
the music
absolutely.
industry. And
What
yeah, Kirk Bernard, who let him play, loved the Mother's Day song too so much he said, "Let's go up to my studio and record it right now."
well, isn't that cool?
It was really cool. It was something.
Kurt Bernard's a good guy. I've worked with Kurt many times on the road with other shows like with Tommy Hunter and whatnot, and he was very good. Um, that particular movie also had a guy in there by the name of Kent Brockwell, who was from
Okay.
Peterborough.
Yeah.
And Tom and him became quite good friends. And Kent had a riding stable here, so we used to go riding horses at his place. And I was a kid, and he'd sing to everybody on the trails when we were going there. And I mean, he was so proud to be in that movie. It was unbelievable.
It's a movie that always stood out to me as a kid because it made me a Stompin' Tom fan. It really was him at his rawest, I guess, back in the Horseshoe days, you know?
We sure need another one. There's no doubt.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I'd be hard pressed to ask you for a comment. I heard that Mark LaForme passed away, who you
He did.
probably got to know quite well over the years
I
out
very
there.
much so. I knew
Um,
Mark years ago before we even did the Tom tour, and it was a very tragic. You know, I thought the world of Mark.
yeah, Billy was telling me about it too. They were quite close, and um, just I know he toured with Tom quite a bit and recorded with him, I'm pretty sure as well. So,
Did.
but
The only one other version of I Am the Wind that I've ever heard that I like any as much or better than Tom's version was Mark LaForme, because he knew how to sing that song. And the night he did that at Tom's memorial service certainly tore everybody up. And that was
Yeah.
Tom's request that Mark sing that at that particular event. So it
Oh,
was quite,
he did a wonderful job of it. Like, because I was there at the memorial myself. It was
yes, he
I
sure
still
did.
have to compliment you on how you handled that. That you did such a good job of hosting that, by the way. It was an honor to be there. And
Well, when I come back on from Florida and met with Tom when he wasn't doing all that well, um, when somebody puts that kind of trust in you to do that, it becomes a lot easier to do, because at least you know what you're doing is something that they wanted you to do. And I wasn't going cold in there. At least I knew that 98% of that, Tom was aware of what he wanted in there, and that made it a heck of a lot easier to do. And
sure.
the fact that he let me do it here in Peterborough for various reasons, one of them being the connection Tom had here, and I was from here, it was really tied it in well together. And the people in the community were so supportive of it. It was wonderful.
Um, Before I go, I want to ask you, well, I don't know if you can answer this question. Do you know if there's anything on the burner for Tom that might be coming out?
I don't know. I know that there's certainly there was some recordings that he had done over that were
Right.
called Songs from the Vault. And I'm not sure they've got them all out yet. There was 100 of them.
Yeah.
Because there was an original series that he had done of two 5 LP sets many years ago.
Yeah.
And I was one of the things that Tom played me just when he was not doing that well health wise, was he was playing me those CDs and how proud he was of them. So I think there's more of them to come out still. I don't know what else is in store. I have no idea.
Right.
I would assume there's something, because there was enough of those songs still available that a series can come out for quite some time. And they're good old country songs that he loved. I mean, a
Right.
house party at Tom's place was very interesting. It was like you could go there and you can hear a Stompin Tom song or two, but then you got a chance to hear stuff that Tom liked personally growing
Mhm.
up, by Hank Thompson, or you could hear, he knew I was my dad was a square dance caller, and there was an old country song called Silver Bells. And I had never heard the words of it before. I heard the instrumental version, but Tom would sing that. And he would sing a lot of old Hank Williams stuff, and just stuff that he really, really loved as a kid, Mac Wiseman stuff, the whole bit. So it was great. I mean, I if anything I cherished on the road was those nights that we would have those intimate jam sessions, or if I went up to Tom's place and he got the guitar out and just do stuff that he knew that I really loved a lot. And I really miss that, because they were very special to me.
That's what Tim Hadley said. He said there'd be nights where they'd be, getting together to play in the hotel room or something after a show, and they'd be like, tonight's a Hank night. So they do all country singers that were named Hank, Hank Thompson, Hank Snow, Hank Williams, Hank
Well,
Lachlan, whoever.
Well, it was no secret that I made as many shows as I could, and especially the last 10 or 15 years, I was at all of them. But what was a neat compliment for me was he would know I was coming out there. I'd always come in the night before the show, and he would get the craft dinner ordered up, and the Kentucky Fried Chicken, and the bottle of Crown Royal Black, and the Moosehead beer. And he'd say, Edwards is coming up tonight. I'm going to do a real old country jam session. And man, it would go. And he would sit there and wink at me and look over, and he'd just keep going and going and going, because I loved it a lot. It was my own private concert. And there's nothing in the world can ever replace that, ever. It was so, so special to me.
Oh, for sure. I must ask you, what have you got coming up? Like, I know I thought remember you saying something about not doing too much when the COVID was going on, but now
No,
that it's over with, are you keeping busy doing stuff?
I'm still just kind of Darren Walter's a great friend of mine I've worked with for many years. Darren had a production show called Oh What a Night that he had produced in his theater, And
Mhm.
every once in a while we take it out. We're doing a run in October with that, pretty well coast to coast, and gave me a chance to get my feet wet. I haven't done that for a while, so we'll see how we make out with that. I'm kind of excited about it. We're doing a small run in the United States for a week, and then we come up and do all across Canada. So I'm just kind of get my feet wet, and we'll see what happens. I'm not too anxious to get back out there, but if something's right, I'll go back out and do some stuff. But I'm not going out for 150, 200 days a year. Those days are
No.
long gone to the Yukon.
Well, you better get in touch with me if you come to Charlottetown to do something.
Well, I certainly will. I want to listen. One of the most favorite spots in the world, as I expressed that night up in Prince Edward Island. I mean, when I could rhyme off how many shows we put on in Prince Edward Island, man, it was a whack of them over the years with various artists that and going up around that Skinner's Pond and Summerside area is just like going home. I knew everybody in that audience. And as you know, I had a hard time getting through part of the bit about Tom. I kind of saved Tom to last, and I had a tough time getting through it. But once I got going, and I'm ready to go now, I did Tom's play was down in Port Hope here this summer. They
Mhm.
did 3 weeks of the Battle of Stompin Tom. So I went down a couple of nights and I spoke to some of the people down there, and I felt very, very relaxed with it. And I got a chance to tell there's so many Peterborough stories you can tell that
Yeah.
it's certainly easy to do. So, and being Port Hope is 15 miles from Peterborough, it was cool.
Yeah, because even here this summer, Catherine McClellan was doing shows of all of her dad's music.
What was that right?
Yeah, she was doing it all summer, off and on at the Summerside.
Oh,
And
great.
I've heard she's got an album out of where she does all of her dad's songs, and she does a really good job.
I just finished reading the Anne Murray book again for about the fourth time, and the references she makes to Johnny Reed's club in Charlottetown is
Yeah.
amazing. And then the time she played there, and of course, Snowbird coming from Gene, and I don't know, he wrote Cotton Jenny or not, but she certainly did a lot of his songs over the years, and she certainly had a lot of respect for Johnny Reed, as we all did. Now, there's a night that I'll never forget, playing Charlottetown and having Johnny Reed come out to the hotel and listen to him and Tom talk for 5 or 6 hours. Boy, I thought that was the greatest thing ever. It was lovely.
Oh, there's so many people that could tell those stories with
Oh
Tom.
God, I guess so. So
Well,
all
now
good.
that you're a Canadian Country Music Hall of Famer, you're gonna bring the award show to Peterborough.
I don't know yet. There's a lot of things crossing my mind at the moment about that whole Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame thing. And I, you never know what I'll do with all of that. I mean, it would be kind of fun to go across the road and do, if I could put it together and maybe do, a video montage of some stuff and bring some of the artists like Carol Baker and Donnelly, Roy, or Eddie Eastman, whatever. I don't know. I just thought about it one night. Nobody else knows that yet, but I just kind of thought about it in the back of my mind that it'd be kind of fun to do. I would really enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, now that I just think it'd be neat to see the Canadian Country Music Awards in smaller towns now.
Oh, that's where they should be. You
Yeah.
know, there would have been so much. Um, Now, mind you, when I say that, I haven't seen a more warm welcome than we did in Hamilton.
Right.
Trust me, those people were spectacular. But I agree with you. I mean, the Canadian Country Music Awards probably would, do just as well here too. So I couldn't agree more.
Or even Charlottetown.
There you go. Well, it used to go all over the country, and
Did
now I
it?
see
Yeah.
it pretty well goes between Calgary and London, Ontario, Edmonton, and then Hamilton. It seems to be the four of them go back and forth. I don't know why, but that's what it seems to do.
No, it just, yeah, it's, well, at least they're having it in different cities. They're not just having it in the same place, which is kind of
Yeah,
nice too.
it's in Edmonton next year, and I told them that would come back out again because that's kind of the next step for the person that won this year, presents the medallions to the people that win next year. So that's kind of cool.
Well, I'm still going to try and work on Billy and some of the ex-Tom band members to get a show out here with all the ex-Tom members out here in Skinner's
Boy,
Pond.
God help you. It was, speaking, one more little piece of trivia is that Jason McCoy had gone into the Hall of Fame this year as well. He was a
Hmm.
wonderful performer. And we had met up in Tignish they were doing a festival up there that Stompin Tom happened to be on. So Jason was on that show too. So we had a bit of a connection from a few years ago. And I'll tell you, there's nobody more down to earth and gracious as he is. And of course, had a wonderful career. And I certainly am glad we had a chance to spend some time together in Hamilton.
I know he does. I've seen him sing the anthem several times at some Barrie Colts hockey games. So
Oh yeah.
I hope you don't take too much offense to him with the Barrie Colts and
Oh,
your Peterborough connection.
oh, heck, we'll get him over here sometime when Barry's playing and Peterborough's playing. Let him do it. We'll beat Barry in the hockey game. It'll be fine with me.
You guys can fight it out up in the stands.
Absolutely. Yeah,
For
very
sure.
good.
And congratulations on the Pete's winning the OHL title last year. And
Well, there's not one place I can go around the world as soon as I say Peterborough, are you a Pete's fan? That's the first thing they say, no matter where we are. It's kind of neat that we're so recognized with the with hockey.
well, that's kind of the reason. That's the reason we wound up at Tom's Memorial, because we went up the night before to see my Mississauga Steelheads play the Pete's the night
Oh,
before.
there you go.
And then we're
Well,
like,
it's kind of
let's
it's
stick
kind of
around and we'll go to Tom's Memorial tomorrow.
well, it's kind of fun because when you stop and think about some of the greatest players and coaches, from Peterborough, like Steve Eiserman and Scotty Bowman coached here for a while, and
Yep.
of course went to Detroit. But I'm going back to the days of Stan Jonathan, and Roger Nielsen was one of the coaches here for a while and everything. So it was kind of, it certainly holds a lot of history with hockey. There's no doubt about it. The Dick and Mick Redmond used to be from Peterborough, and they played for Detroit as well. So it's all good.
Roger Nielsen coached there too, from what I
He
remember.
did. They got the road going into the arena is called the Roger Nielsen Way, as a matter of
That's
fact.
right. That's
They
right
renamed
too.
the street, so it's good. Very, very
Well,
good.
I worked in horse racing at Mohawk Racetrack for years, and our track announcer was Frank Salive, and he was a goalie for the Pete's back in the 70s, you might remember.
Well, I know one thing. I'm a big horse race fan, and I've been to that racetrack many, many times. Where Carol Baker and her husband join us up there once a year. We go up for dinner there at Mohawk, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I love that place.
Yeah, I did the audio there for 10
Oh,
years.
oh, great!
So,
That's a lot of fun there. I'll tell you. We'd go up there many, many times, too many times, but we always had fun.
no, it's a great spot to come out and have dinner and
Oh, you bet.
hopefully not lose too much money betting on the races. But
As long as you have fun, that's the main thing. Yeah.
yeah, it was really something to see Billy here this summer. He was in Charlotte. He played Old Home Week this year.
Oh,
The
did
night,
he? Good.
the night of the Gold Cup and Saucer, the big race down here in Charlottetown. So it was really something to see Billy here that week. It was because he really is well known here on the island. It's great to see him coming back here once a year and playing some shows.
We had to come in there. We were on a Peterborough Airport runs 7 different trips every year, depending. And one of the years happened to be Charlottetown. So my wife Barbara and I went down there, and we met up with another good friend of mine by the name of Brandon Gillis from Charlottetown, and we ended up at his place. And Billy come over that night, and we had a great time there. And Brandon's a fine country singer as well, and just had a great night. Always have a good time in Prince Edward Island, no matter where we are.
I didn't realize the musician that Billy's dad was. I've met Billy's dad this year. Apparently, he was quite a musician.
Absolutely. Yeah, he sure is. And Brandon Gillis's grandfather owned a music store in Charlottetown for many, many years, and his father was a great songwriter too. So there's been a lot of talent come out of Prince Edward Island, and of course all of Canada, but there's a lot of it in Prince Edward Island. There's no doubt about it. I was going through some stuff at Tommy Hunter's house the other day, and Charlie Chamberlain had given him this walking stick that he had. So I was quite happy to see that Tommy still had that. It was great.
Well, if you ever get back here in the summer, you'll have to check out the Car Life Museum up the road here.
Oh, great.
One of Don Messer's touring cars is in there.
Oh, very good. Isn't that neat?
I think there's a pink Cadillac in there that Elvis owned, and one of Anne Murray's cars is in there too.
Well, I got to come back and go to the Blue Mussel. That's one of my favorite places to eat. So I got to come back there.
Yeah, for sure. I always thought they should have got Tom's old boot truck in that Car Life Museum.
Where that truck even is these days. It was parked out there for a long time. There was a wax museum that existed at one time there.
Yeah.
And there was a statue of Tom there. I think the truck was up near the schoolhouse at one point, I think.
It
the
was
years.
when I was a kid. The first time I went as a kid, I remember seeing it had 4 flat tires on it. And it was still
Yeah.
sitting there at the back where the outhouses were. And
Well, the first time I was at the school many years ago, Tom was with us, so that was it was kind of a unique little tour. He could tell you all about the school and where he sat, and so on
yeah,
and so. So it was quite cool. Very, very good.
no, I can't thank you for joining me. I can't thank you enough for joining me. It
When you and
was
I get talking here, an hour goes by pretty quick. We get to talk for 3 hours. I always enjoy it very much, and
yeah,
thank you for having me again. And hopefully, we'll get down there before long for a visit. It'll be a lot of fun.
you're an easy guy to talk to, Brian. It's not a problem at all. And I look forward to having chats with you whenever we can.
Well, thank you very much for having me again, Alan. And we'll talk to you soon.
Take care, Brian.
All the best. Have a good night. Thank
You
you.
too. Bye.
Bye bye.